Hey there, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, please hit that sub button and join the family. Smash that like button if you enjoyed today's stories.
Disclaimer on reading materials. The stories are carefully crafted, altered, and embellished by our team. This is to abide by YouTube's policies on reading materials. We hold sole intellectual rights to these stories as original content. The whole reason I even looked on Facebook Marketplace was because my roommate bailed last minute, took the food, and left me in a mostly empty apartment. I had like a week before my girlfriend was visiting from out of town, and I didn't want to be sitting on the floor like a total loser. I wasn't gonna blow my whole paycheck on something new either, so I started scrolling and found this velvet green couch with gold trim. Super extra, yeah, but kind of cool looking in that grandma who does tarot cards kind of way. The seller's name was Amina the Weirdo. I know, the name checks out. Super weird AF. Her profile picture was her wearing these massive sunglasses and holding a snake, which should maybe been my first clue that this wasn't gonna be a normal transaction. Anyway, she replied fast. Said I could come by that night if I had cash. The address was about 30 minutes out, in this weird neighborhood that looked like it had been halfway renovated, then completely forgotten. Her place was a duplex, but it had this curtain over the door instead of a regular screen door, like those bead strings from the early 2000s, except they were little plastic eyeballs. I remember standing there trying to decide if I should knock or just turn around and lie about getting lost, but then she pulled the curtain aside and smiled like I was already late. She had this super raspy voice like she smoked a pack every hour, and everything she said felt like it was part of some inside joke she hadn't let me in on yet. She waved me into this living room that smelled like incense and nail polish remover, and there was a couch. It looked even cooler in person, kind of like something you'd see in a photo studio or a magician's lounge. The gold legs were real metal, not painted plastic like I assumed. It was heavier than it looked, and she helped me carry it to my car, which was a little weird because she was really small, but surprisingly strong. So I get it home, and the first thing I do is clean it because it felt kind of greasy. Like it didn't look dirty exactly, but I just didn't want to be lounging on something that smelled like Vicks and cats. I took a lint roller to it, wiped it down, even vacuumed under the cushions. That's when I found the first one. It looked like a button at first, small and black and shiny, stuck right in the seam with a cushion at the backrest. But it wasn't a button. It had a tiny lens inside, like a mini camera. I thought maybe it was some kind of weird baby monitor or old security thing, but then I found another. Then another. They were stitched in so carefully that you had to really dig to notice them. I ended up flipping the whole thing upside down and cutting into one of the seams with a box cutter. Inside, along the wooden frame, there were wires. I counted 14 total. 4 in the arms, 3 in the backrest, 2 in the cushions, 5 underneath. None of them were connected to power, but they all looked real, not toy junk or broken pieces. I tried searching serial numbers online, but nothing came up. I even texted my buddy who works IT, sent him a photo, and he just replied, "What the hell is that?" The whole thing gave me this gross feeling like I'd sat on something alive. I didn't want it in my place anymore, so I messaged Amia again and told her I wanted to talk. She didn't even ask what about. She just sent the same address and said, "After dark is best." I went back around 9. This time I parked on the opposite side of the street because something about her vibe was just off. When she opened the door, she was already grinning. I asked her why there were cameras sewn into the couch. She didn't deny it. She just leaned against the doorway and said, "They're not on, are they?" And laughed like I just told a dumb joke. I told her that wasn't the point, and she gave me this look like I was a little kid asking why the moon followed the car. She said, "It's not illegal if you don't record anything." Then she shut the curtain and didn't come back out. I left and drove straight to my cousin's garage. We took the whole thing apart. I'm talking sliced open every seam, ripped the fabric off the frame, pulled out all the foam and springs. There were 20 cameras in total, 6 more than I thought, and none of them were fake. A few were missing SD cards, but the rest were empty. Or wiped, we checked. There were also these little metal tubes tucked into the armrests like hidden compartments. One had what looked like old receipts rolled up tight. Another had a photo strip from one of those booth things. Amina, with 2 other people I didn't recognize, all making weird faces. The background had that same eyeball curtain. I didn't know what to do with any of it. The cops weren't gonna care since nothing illegal technically happened, and I didn't feel like being part of whatever Amina was doing. I ended up dumping the frame, cameras, and everything else at a scrapyard and telling them if it was damaged furniture from a storage unit. My girlfriend still visited. We ended up sitting on the floor and using camping chairs. I told her the couch got water damaged in the rain, and she didn't ask more. I still check Amina's marketplace listings sometimes. She always has furniture up. Fancy chairs, velvet chases, weird ottomans shaped like animals. Her profile pic changes a lot too, but it's always her with something weird. An owl, a mannequin head, a doll with missing eyes. I reported her once, but her listings never disappear for long. Every now and then I'll see one of her couches pop up in a friend of a friend's apartment post. I'll look at the trim, the pattern, the cushions. I never comment, but I always wonder if they ever open it up. Okay, so this is probably gonna sound like one of those stories where the person should have known better from the beginning, and maybe I should have, but like, what was I supposed to do? I just needed a fridge. Not a big one or anything, just something small enough to go under my desk in the studio. I make pizza in this tiny rented office downtown, and the vending machine in the hall has been broken since forever. So I figured it was time to level up and get a fridge for drinks and snacks and maybe those little microwave sandwiches I pretend aren't disgusting. So I go on Facebook Marketplace and start scrolling through the usual half-broken junk. After about 20 minutes, I see this ad that just says mini fridge backslash $25. Works with a blurry photo of something that looks halfway between a microwave and a safe. Not much info, just the name Eddie and a pickup window listed as after 6 only. I messaged him and he replied like 10 minutes later. Told me to bring cash and come to the back entrance of some warehouse-style building on the east side. That should probably been my first red flag, but backslash $25 is backslash $25, and I've met weirder people buying camera gear. The address wasn't super sketchy or anything. It was one of those industrial buildings that got halfway turned into artists' loft before the city just kind of gave up on the permits. There was a lot of graffiti, some smashed mailboxes, but it wasn't dark or creepy. I pulled into the alley behind it, and there was this dude already waiting near a loading dock. Mid-30s maybe, wearing a heavy jacket even though it was hot out, and he had this ponytail that looked like it hadn't been washed since winter. Eddie didn't say much. Just nodded when I asked if it worked and helped me load the thing into my backseat. It was heavier than it looked. I gave him the cash, said thanks, and he just kind of walked back inside without another word. I drove home with the windows cracked because even through the plastic wrap, the fridge had this smell like metal and old meat. I figured it had just been in storage or someone's gross dorm and needed a good wipe down. Back at my apartment, I got it into the kitchen and took off the plastic. The outside was fine, some scuffs and a dent on the side, but nothing major. I plugged it in and it kicked on right away. The light inside worked, fan made a hum, no weird noises. I figured I'd scored. Then I opened it. It hit me like right in the nose. This thick, nasty smell that wasn't just rot. It was sharper than that. Not like expired food, but like chemicals and copper. My first thought was maybe someone stored raw meat in it and it leaked, or maybe some clean product spilled inside. So I grabbed a rag and started wiping. That's when I noticed the vials. There were like 4 dozen of them, packed into the tiny drawer at the bottom and lined up in perfect rows like someone had really taken their time. Little glass tubes sealed with red rubber stoppers. I thought they might be samples of wine or juice at first, but then I saw the labels. Everyone had a name and a date handwritten in blue marker, and the liquid inside, it wasn't dark like wine. It was this sick reddish brown with clots floating in a few of them. Blood, like unmistakably blood. I dropped the whole drawer on the counter and 3 of the vials rolled off and shattered on the floor. The smell got worse, way worse. I opened all the windows, sprayed half a bottle of cleaner, and still couldn't get it out of the kitchen. I didn't even know what to do at that point. I sat on the floor and just stared at the fridge like it was gonna start talking or something. Once I stopped panicking, I took pictures. Not for the cops or anything. I don't even know why, honestly. Just proof. I dumped the drawer outside in the dumpster behind my building, hosed off the counter, and packed the fridge back into my car. I didn't want that thing in my apartment another minute. I messaged Eddie again, just like, what the hell was in this thing? And he replied like 5 minutes later with, you weren't supposed to open it yet. That was it. Nothing else. Not even a lol or emoji or anything. Just that sentence. I blocked him and reported the listing, but his profile disappeared the next day. I checked the address again on Google Maps, and the building's listed as unclaimed. I even drove by the alley 2 days later, and the whole loading dock was empty, like totally abandoned. No lights on, no trash, nothing. The weirdest part, one of the names on the vials was super familiar. It wasn't until a few days later that I remembered where from. It was this girl I matched with on Tinder last year. We never met up, but I remembered her name because she had this dumb pun in her bio and we joked about it. I still had her messages saved, so I checked. It was her. Same spelling, same profile pic. I didn't sleep much that night, just kept picturing that drawer and wondering if all those names were real people, if they were missing or sick or even alive. I thought about reporting it to the cops, but what was I gonna say? I bought a fridge on Facebook and found blood in it. They'd probably just tell me to throw it away, which I did, or I tried to. I ended up driving to one of those big commercial dumpsters behind a grocery store and just dumping it there around 2 in the morning. I scrubbed my car out with bleach wipes and aired it for days, but the smell still lingers sometimes, especially on hot days. I don't know if it's in my head or what. Since then, I've only used Marketplace for stuff like books and plants. No more appliances. No more weird meetups in alleys. I keep thinking about how Eddie said you weren't supposed to open it yet. Like it was a plan. A step 2. What happens if I had waited? Would someone come to pick it up? Would he have messaged again? I still check news sites sometimes for any stories that match. A missing person, a busted operation, anything. But there's never anything about it. Just an ordinary fridge with an unordinary secret. So my girlfriend's into this whole old wood vibe lately. She's been filling our apartment with stuff like cracked mirrors, bent candle holders, and chairs that nobody actually sits in. I don't really care what the place looks like as long as there's somewhere to sit and the Wi-Fi works, but she got it in her head that we needed a statement dresser for the bedroom, whatever that means. She sent me this Facebook Marketplace post for one listed at /$40. I guess because she was working that day and I had time, I agreed to go pick it up. Honestly, I just wanted her to stop sending me links to furniture at 2 in the morning. The dresser looked old, like really old, but kind of cool too. All scratched up with these weird spiral handles and carved feet. The seller's name was Connor, and his listing just said, moving soon, pickup only. He messaged back super quick, like, yeah man, it's still here, swing by whenever. Connor's place was on this weird stretch of road outside of town, where the houses start getting farther apart, and the lawns all look like nobody really mows them. They just let nature kind of take over. I pulled into this gravel driveway that dipped behind some trees, and his house was smaller than I expected, almost like a cabin, but not quite that nice. It had lopsided, like a strong wind could probably knock it over. He answered the door barefoot with a beer in his hand, even though it was barely 11 a.m., and pointed toward the living room like he didn't even want to be awake yet. The dresser was sitting by the window, surrounded by boxes and this big rolled-up rug that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. I asked if it was all one piece, or if the drawers came out to make it easier to lift, and he just laughed and said, "You'll figure it out." Cool, thanks, Connor. I didn't think much of it at the time. I wrestled the thing into the back of my car, texted my girlfriend a photo, and she sent back like 12 heart emojis. On the way home, I stopped for gas and could have sworn I heard something shifting in the back, like a drawer sliding a little, even though I thought they were all shut tight. I figured it was just a bumpy road or maybe something in the globe box rattling. Back at our apartment, I got the thing up 2 flights of stairs by myself, because apparently I hate asking for help, and set it up in the corner of the bedroom where she cleared out the old bookshelf. It fit perfectly, actually. Like, the size was weirdly exact, like it had been made for that spot. But when I started opening the drawers, I realized one of them was stuck. Not like jammed, like something inside was blocking it. I tilted the dresser forward and tried to look behind it, but the drawer wouldn't budge. So I pulled out the one above it and reached down. My hand brushed against something that felt like a stack of paper. Thin, soft, and kind of crumbly. I managed to fish it out, and it was a notebook, like a cheap spiral one, the kind kids use in school. The cover was almost falling off and stained like it had gotten wet at some point. And it wasn't just one. Behind that drawer, Someone had hidden 6 or 7 of these little notebooks, all bundled up with rubber bands. I took them into the kitchen and started flipping through one, thinking maybe they were old school notes or some forgotten journal. But they weren't that. They were diary entries, every single one. All in pencil, some pages nearly rubbed smooth from how hard the writer pressed, and they were all written by a kid, like a small kid. The handwriting was shaky and messy, and the entries were dated, early 2000s mostly, and talked about being in the room. The same room, over and over again. But they weren't normal entries. They weren't school was boring or I played video games. They were all about being locked in, not grounded, locked in. He turned off the light again. She said I can't come out until the crying stops. It's cold. I used the sock as a pillow, stuff like that. One page just said, I heard someone else today, over and over. Another one said, the drawer is where I keep my drawings. But there weren't any drawings left in the notebooks, just pages ripped out. Some had little scratches near the binding, like the pencil had torn through while writing too fast. I went through all of them. Same handwriting, same kid. The names of the people changed a few times. Sometimes mom, sometimes her, sometimes just initials. There was one that mentioned a dog named Toby that was nice until they took him away. I sat there just staring at the stack, trying to figure out how to tell my girlfriend. She came home and loved the dresser immediately, kept saying how it made the whole room feel grounded. I didn't say anything that first night. I just put the notebooks in a tote and shoved it under the bed. Next morning, I messaged Connor again. Didn't accuse him or anything, just said, hey, found some notebooks in the dresser. Any idea what those are? He didn't answer right away, so I left it alone. A few hours later, I get the short reply. That's why it's cheap. I stared at the message for like a full minute. No emoji. No haha. No follow-up. Just that sentence. A reply asking what he meant, but he didn't read it. The next day, his profile was gone. Not blocked, just deleted. We ended up keeping the dresser. I don't know why. My girlfriend doesn't know about the diaries. They're still under the bed in that same tote, wrapped in a garbage bag because they stink like mildew and something worse now. I thought about burning them, but haven't yet. Some nights I wake up and swear I hear something shifting inside the drawers, like papers moving. But I tell myself it's just the wood settling. The sound of old furniture breathing, or whatever. So I started running again. Not for like some inspirational reason or anything. I just got tired of breathing heavy every time I had to jog across the street. A little sister called me winded and 30 as a joke, which hurt more than it should have. Anyway, I figured a treadmill would be easier than pretending I'm gonna jog outside every morning when I barely even get up for work on time. I looked on Marketplace because I wasn't about to drop $500 on something I might only use for 2 weeks. That's where I saw Christie's listing. Foldable treadmill, works great, only $60. The pictures weren't great, but it looked fine, like something you'd see in a dentist's waiting room with a fitness corner. I messaged her and she responded with this super polite, kind of robotic tone. So I could swing by after 5. He'd be in a dress in this neighborhood that's all split-level homes from the 90s. Nothing weird. Seemed normal. I showed up around 5:30. It was summer, so the sun was still out and everything looked regular, quiet cul-de-sac. Sprinklers on, a guy washing his truck a couple houses down. Her place was kind of tucked back behind these overgrown hedges, but again, nothing crazy, just not super maintained. She opened the door after one knock like she was already waiting. She was maybe mid-40s, short haircut, wearing one of those zip-up athletic jackets people wear even if they've never worked out. Didn't smile, but didn't seem rude either, just quiet. She waved me in and led me through the house, and that's when it got off. Everything was super clean, like hospital-level clean. No clutter, no dust, no weird smells, but it felt wrong in a way I couldn't pin down. There were no decorations. No pictures, no books, not even a rug. Just white walls and furniture that looked like it had never been sat on. The whole place was weirdly silent too, like she'd unplugged the fridge and covered all the vents. The treadmill was in the back room, set up already and facing a big window with the blinds pulled halfway down. It looked fine. Basic, older model, little screen on the front. She told me it still worked, and just stood back and let me check it out. I stepped on it, leaned forward, pressed a few buttons to see if the screen lit up. It did. I said it looked good, and she just nodded once, like, yeah, obviously. I was about to ask if she had the manual or anything when I noticed the wall behind her. It took a second to register. At first, I thought it was wallpaper or maybe framed photos, but it wasn't either. It was Polaroids. Dozens of them, all stuck directly to the wall in this uneven grid. No frames, just raw photos. And they were all people. Different people, different clothes, different seasons, but they were all in the exact same pose. Every single one of them was standing next to the treadmill, angled just slightly to the left. Same awkward half smile. Same weird lighting. A couple of them were even wearing the same shirt I had on. My stomach dropped. I don't know how else to describe it. I turned back to Christy and she was just watching me. Not smiling, not blinking, just standing super still like she was waiting to see what I'd say. I tried to play it cool. I said something like, "Oh, you take a picture every time you sell something." And she didn't respond. Just tilted her head a tiny bit like she was thinking about how much to say. I laughed mostly because I didn't know what else to do and stepped off the treadmill. I pulled out my wallet and handed her the cash, and she took it without looking at it. I asked if she could help me fold it, and she said no. Said it stays as it is. I didn't argue. I just unplugged it, wheeled it out the door, and loaded it into my back seat with the trunk tied halfway shut. She watched from the porch the entire time. Driving away, I couldn't stop thinking about the photos, the repetition of it. The way nobody in them looked comfortable. Some of them had their arms crossed. Some were kind of turned away like they were mid-step. None of them looked like they'd posed on purpose, and none of them were smiling with their teeth. I got home and wheeled the thing into my garage. I figured I'd deal with setting it up later, but I couldn't stop thinking about those photos. I looked through the marketplace listing again. Her profile was totally blank except for the treadmill post, which was now marked as sold. I messaged her asking if she took those pictures as a joke or something, and she didn't reply. The message marked as read, but nothing back. I ended up Googling her name, just Christy and the town we live in. Not much came of. A few mentions in church newsletters, an old job posting from like 2012, a photo of her with a dog at some local fair. But there was something else. On a Reddit thread about weird Facebook sellers, someone had posted a photo of her wall. Not the exact same way I saw it, but definitely hers. Same layout, same room. The post was a year old, and someone had commented, "I bought a microwave from her. Same deal. She asked me to pose for a photo next to it before I left." I clicked through a few other links. There were mentions of her in other posts, but none of them ever went anywhere serious. Just people saying she was creepy or that her house gave them weird vibes. No accusations. No police reports. Just vibes. So I moved the treadmill into storage. I didn't want it in the house. Not because I thought it was haunted or anything, but just the feeling it gave me. Like someone had watched me do something I didn't agree to. Like I'd accidentally walked into a stranger's ritual and didn't realize it until it was already over. I haven't used it once. Sometimes I go into the garage just to check if it's still there. Still plugged in, still normal. It always is, but I still think about the photos. All those people, all in the same spot, with the same look in their eyes. Not scared exactly, just frozen. I deleted her contact and blocked the listing, even though it was already gone. But sometimes I check Marketplace anyway, just out of curiosity. And every once in a while, I'll see a new listing. Different item, different name, but always that same background, that same white wall, that same corner of the room. And now I wonder if someone out there has a photo of me on their wall looking just as uncomfortable as the others. Maybe already pinned up. Maybe already part of the set. I used to be super into collecting old media stuff, like VHS tapes, cassette players, even film reels when I could find them. I'm not one of those guys who thinks analog is better or whatever. I just like the look of it. The weird clunky labels, handwritten titles, faded stickers from Blockbuster. There's something kind of cool about it. I had this big wall of shelves in my old apartment where I kept everything. People would come over and think I was being ironic or trying to be retro, but I actually watched the tapes. Found some weird stuff on them sometimes. Old news broadcasts, lost commercials, home videos people probably forgot they donated. So I was browsing Facebook Marketplace late one night, half bored, half hoping I'd find something weird, and I see this listing: box of VHS tapes for free, first come, first serve. The pictures were super blurry, and there were like 4 of them. A big cardboard box overflowing with tapes. Some were blank, others had stuff scribbled on them like Tony's Bay or Fishing Trip 1998. The guy's name on the listing was just Mitch, no profile pic, barely any info. He didn't even say where he was located, just that you had to pick them up from the porch. Normally I wouldn't bother, but something about it made me screenshot it and message him. He replied fast, said the tapes were still there, gave me an address, told me to come after 9. I figured, okay, weird but not that weird. Sometimes people don't want strangers coming by during daylight because of nosy neighbors. I've picked up stranger things at stranger hours. The address was in this neighborhood about 20 minutes outside town, not super familiar to me, but it wasn't totally rural either, just quiet, kind of out of the way. I pulled up around 9:20. The house was this squat little ranch-style thing with peeling paint and a saggy porch roof. A single dim bulb lit the doorway, and there was the box, right where he said it'd be, sitting in a wobbly plastic chair next to the door. I didn't see anyone. I waited a second, said, "Hey, Mitch," kinda loud, just in case he was watching. No answer. I figured he wasn't the talkative type. I loaded the box into my trunk and drove off. Back home, I dumped the box out in the living room and started going through it. There were maybe 40 tapes total. A lot of them looked homemade, generic black tapes, masking tape labels, some missing the little flaps on the reels. The handwriting was all over the place. Some looked like they were written by a kid, others in shaky cursive, others just scribbled with Sharpie. A few were completely unlabeled. I popped one in just to see what I got. It started with static, then cut to this grainy footage of a backyard barbecue. Kids running around, someone grilling, the usual stuff. It was kind of nice, actually. I watched for a couple minutes, then moved on. The second one was an old TV recording of Wheel of Fortune, commercials and all. Again, cool, but nothing too weird. The third one was different. It started with about 10 seconds of black screen and jumped to this shaky footage of a street, like clearly shot from inside a house through a curtain or blinds. The camera was pointed across the street at another house, just a regular suburban home. The angle barely moved, like it was set up on a tripod or resting on a windowsill. Then a person came out the front door. A woman. She walked down the steps and got into a car. Nothing really happened. She sat there for a while, then drove off. The camera kept rolling. For 20 straight minutes, it just stayed fixed on the empty house. Then it cut to static. I took the tape out and checked the label. It said Tuesday p.m. That was it. I put in another. This one was labeled Window, red curtains. The footage showed an apartment building from across a courtyard. The camera zoomed in slowly on a second-story window with, you guessed it, red curtains. They were drawn open. Inside, a guy was sitting at a table eating. He got up, walked out of frame, came back with a drink. The tape went on like that for almost an hour. Just this guy living his life, completely unaware he was being filmed. There were more. A lot more. Every single unlabeled tape was like that. People filmed from outside their homes, through windows, through fences, across the street. One had audio, kind of. You'd hear a clock ticking and what sounded like someone breathing. But the camera never moved. Just stared at a back patio where a girl in a yellow sweatshirt was sitting with headphones on. Another take showed a bedroom. The footage was shaky, like it was handheld this time. The person filming was outside, behind a fence or maybe a bush. You could see a girl brushing her hair in front of a mirror. Then she turned out the light and left the room. The tape kept going. 30 minutes of an empty room. I watched 6 of them before I had to stop. My hands were shaking. I wasn't even sure what I was watching anymore. These weren't security tapes. These were private. Intimate. Wrong. Then I saw a face I recognized. It took a second to place her. She was walking out of a coffee shop, laughing, holding a phone to her ear. The camera followed her for a few seconds. She got into a small blue car and drove off. I paused it and stared. I knew her from high school. We weren't close, but I remembered her, Emily. She was a year below me. We had bio together. I remember because she used to doodle spiders all over her notebook. I hadn't seen her in years. I looked her up. She still lived in town. Her profile was active. I didn't know what to do. Do I tell her? Do I call someone? I just sat there, feeling like I'd stumbled into something I shouldn't have. Something that wasn't mine. I messaged Mitch again. I didn't really know what to say, so I just wrote, "What are these?" He read it. Didn't reply. His profile disappeared the next day. I ended up locking the tapes in a storage bin and moving it to my friend's garage. I told him it was just junk I didn't want to throw out yet. I haven't watched them since. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with them. Throwing them out feels like pretending they don't exist. Turning them in feels like an invitation I'm not ready for. Sometimes I wonder how many other people got boxes like that. If Mitch was just getting rid of his own, or if he was passing something on. If there's more out there. More windows. More tapes. I used to live in this old converted firehouse that got turned into studio apartments, and we had a weird shared basement where everyone kept their overflow stuff. Bikes, tools, junk, furniture nobody had the heart to throw out. It was always freezing down there, always smelled like dust and rubber, but rent was cheap and the landlord didn't ask questions. I was trying to get back into shape back then, not in a serious way. Just figured it'd be good to lift again instead of sitting around it all the time. My friend let me borrow his old yoga mat, but I needed weights. So I found this listing on Marketplace. The photo looked like something taken in a bunker. It was a rusty-looking set of dumbbells, two 25s, two 10s, and what looked like an adjustable bar with a bunch of mismatched plates. No brand name, no fancy padding, just old-school iron weights. The post was from this guy named Jay. He didn't have a profile pic, but the listing said, "Pick up anytime, just knock." I messaged him, asked if they were still available, and he sent back the address. Real short replies. Not rude or anything, just cold. Said to come around back, doors open. He lived about 10 minutes from me, in this weird section of town where every house looks halfway built and nobody puts numbers on the mail locks. I drove over that afternoon. It was drizzling and gray, and his backyard was a mess. Kind of like someone started building a shed, then gave up halfway and used it for dumping tools and scrap wood. The back door really was open. I knocked on the frame and called out a few times, no answer. There was music playing upstairs, some deep bassy electronic stuff, but nobody came down. I stepped inside and saw the weights sitting on this rolled out carpet, already cleaned and stacked. The room smelled like something chemical had been used recently. Not bleach exactly, but like paint thinner or adhesive remover. I didn't want to be in there long. I grabbed the weights and loaded them into a milk crate I brought, left $40 on the little table by the door like he told me to. Right as I was stepping out, I heard something creak upstairs. I paused for a second, thinking maybe he was finally coming down, but nobody showed up. I got in my car and drove home without looking back. The weights were fine, rusty but solid. I used them that night, did a few quick sets, felt good to be moving again. But the next morning, I noticed one of the plates wasn't sitting right on the bar. It wobbled. I figured maybe it wasn't threaded all the way, so I unscrewed the collar and pulled the plate off. That's when I saw it. Stuck between the plate and the grip section of the bar was a card, like wedged in the space between the plate and a metal bar underneath it. I had to really work it out. It was old and bent, like it had been jammed there for a while. It was an ID card. Government issued with a photo and everything. Not a driver's license, something more official. Had a seal in the corner, but the lamination was bubbled and the edges were torn. The name said Samuel Wyatt. I read it again just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. He looked maybe mid-30s in the photo. Short hair, glasses, kind of normal-looking guy, not smiling, just staring forward like a passport photo. The issue date was from almost 10 years ago. I didn't know what to do with it. My first thought was that maybe Jay found the weights at a yard sale or something and didn't check them. Or maybe he was selling someone else's stuff, like maybe a friend left them behind. But it felt off. You don't accidentally wedge an ID into a weight bar like that, not unless you're trying to hide it. I messaged Jay. Just said, "Hey, found an old ID card stuck in the weights. Belonged to you or someone you know." He replied about an hour later. No greeting, just, "Did you find the rest of the stuff yet?" I stared at the message for a good minute, reread it, read it again. "What stuff?" I replied, "What do you mean?" But he left it on read, never responded again. That night, I went back down to the basement and looked over every single piece of the set. Unscrewed every plate. Checked the bar, the grips, the caps. There was nothing else. No more cards, no writing, no marks. But something about the bar itself felt off, like it was heavier than it should have been. I weighed it with a bathroom scale. It was almost double what a normal bar should weigh, even without the plates. So I took a rubber mallet and started tapping along the bar to listen for hollow spots or rattles. Toward the center, I hit a point that sounded dead. Dull, like there was something inside. I don't know what came over me, but I took a hacksaw and started cutting. Took me a while. This thing was thick, but eventually I cut it open near the grip and found that it had been packed. Filled, not with cement or sand like some bars are. Inside were rolled papers, tightly wrapped in what looked like wax paper or old laminate. A bunch of them. I pulled one out carefully and unwrapped it. It was a letter. Handwritten, maybe 20 pages, folded weird like it had been stashed in a hurry. The writing was messy, rushed. It was a guy, maybe Samuel, writing about someone following him. He mentioned names, places I didn't recognize, kept talking about a locker he was afraid to open, and someone called Jay. A lot of it was hard to follow, like it had been written in panic. But one line stood out. It said, "If this ends up in the wrong hands, dig under the floor in Unit 3A. That was it. Nothing else clear. The rest of the papers were worse. Sketches, scrawled diagrams, pages of half-written thoughts, names crossed out in red pen. One just said, "Not safe here," over and over. I searched Samuel Wyatt online. Nothing recent. Found a few mentions of someone by that name working for a private security firm a decade ago. One news clip said he disappeared during an investigation. Never found. I tried messaging Jay again. Still nothing. His profile was active for a few days, then vanished. I don't use the weights anymore. They're still down in the basement, half cut, stuffed in a storage bin under a tarp. Sometimes I go down there and just stand by them, wondering if I should look deeper, see if there's anything else hidden I missed, but I haven't. I haven't told anyone, not even my roommate. It's one of those things that feels like if I talk about it too much, it'll make it real in the wrong way, like it'll open something I can't shut again. So now they just sit down there, just a broken set of weights that came with something extra. Alright, so I don't really do Facebook Marketplace, like ever. I just don't trust people on there. Everyone either ghosts or shows up super late or tries to upsell you last minute like it's Craigslist in 2010. But my sister insisted I get a baby monitor because I was watching my niece 3 nights a week while she worked this weird hospital shift. I told her I'd just check on the baby like a normal person, but she was freaking out about sleep schedules and noise tracking and all that, so I gave in. She gummed at me like $40 and said, "Just find one that works." I didn't want to wait for shipping, so I looked locally. Found a listing from someone named Lindsay. Just said baby monitor with slash audio and video, backslash $20, and a single blurry pic of a low white camera thing. Looked decent. I messaged her and she answered super fast. Said I could pick it up that day after 4. Gave me her address without me even asking. Kinda pushy, but I figured maybe she was just trying to get rid of stuff. Her place was a second-story apartment over this old shop downtown. One of those buildings that probably used to be a hardware store, but now just sits there with the windows all blacked out. The staircase up to her place was outside and steep as hell. I half thought it was gonna collapse when I stepped on the 3rd stair. When I got to the top, she was already standing in the doorway like she'd been waiting. She didn't smile, didn't really say anything. Just held out the box with the baby monitor and said, "It works fine. Just plug it in." I thanked her, handed her the cash, and she nodded once and shut the door behind her. No small talk. Didn't ask if it was for me or someone else. I thought it was kind of awkward, but whatever. Maybe she was just tired. Back at my place, I set it on the kitchen table while the baby napped in the spare room. It had one of those little handheld monitors with a screen and buttons, and then the camera part you stick in the room. I plugged everything in and messed with the settings. It booted up right away, screen worked, sound came through fine. But it didn't show my niece's room. It showed another one. It was dark, but not pitch black. You could make out a small mattress on the floor, some shelves, and a tiny figure curled up under a blanket. A kid. A little girl, probably about the same age as my niece. She was asleep, totally still, except for the slow rise and fall of her breathing. I stared at the screen for way too long, trying to make sense of it. Thought maybe it was some kind of preloaded video or demo mode. You know, like how those old nanny cams would sometimes show test footage if they weren't synced yet. But the timestamp in the corner was moving. It was real time. I tried switching channels, rescanning, resetting the thing. Nothing changed. It kept reconnecting to that same feed. And the weirdest part, the room looked like a basement. Cement walls, no windows. The kind of basement people don't finish because they're not meant for living in. I turned the monitor off and back on. Same thing. Still that kid. Still asleep. Still not my niece. I unplugged everything and stared at it for a bit, thinking maybe I'd just wait for my sister to bring over the fancier one she mentioned. But then curiosity kicked in. I plugged it back in and watched again. This time the girl had rolled over. You could see her face for a second. Eyes closed, mouth slightly open, breathing shallow. She looked pale. Not sick exactly. Just like she hadn't been outside in a while. I messaged Lindsay and asked if the monitor was synced to something already. She replied almost immediately, "No, it's reset." That was it. I sent back, "I'm seeing a different room. A basement with a kid. Is it still connected to your house?" And all she wrote back was, "Don't worry, she's fine now." I just stared at my phone. My stomach dropped in this slow, creeping way. That kind of dread that doesn't hit all at once but builds like static in your chest. I went to plug the monitor in again, and this time it showed a black screen. No signal. I tried reconnecting the camera to the handheld device, but it wouldn't find anything. I moved it around the apartment, checked every wall, scanned all the frequencies. Still nothing. Then about 5 minutes later, the screen lit up again. Same room, same girl she was sitting up now, looking straight into the camera. I swear to God, she was looking right at me. Not the device, not the wall. Through it, like she knew I was watching. I jumped and nearly dropped the thing. The screen flickered for a second, then it cut out completely again. I didn't plug it back in after that. That night I kept checking on my niece in person. She was fine. Slept through the night, no weird noises, no movement. But I couldn't shake it, the way that girl stared, like she needed something, like she was trapped. The next day I tried to message Lindsay again. No answer. Her profile was still up, but her replies stopped. I searched her name online just to see if anything would pop up. Not much. A couple old pictures from like 10 years ago. A high school graduation post. Nothing recent. I found her apartment again on Google Maps. It was listed as for lease. The listing had been posted the week before. I still have the monitor. I didn't throw it out. I kept it in the drawer under the sink, wrapped in a towel like I didn't want it seeing anything. I thought about giving it to my sister, but I just didn't. Couple weeks later, I tried plugging it in again just to see. Same feed, but the girl was gone. The bed was empty. Room still dark. Still a basement, but no kid. I turned it off. Haven't turned it on since. Sometimes I wonder if it was a glitch. Some freak signal from a baby monitor across the city. Maybe a signal bleed, whatever that's called. But that doesn't explain how Lindsay knew. How she said, she's fine now before I even told her what I saw. I don't know who that girl was or where she is now. But I know what I read. I know what I saw. I used to pick up old tools from Facebook Marketplace, not cause I needed them or anything, but cause I liked fixing them up and reselling them at this flea market my cousin runs. It started as just a weekend hobby, but kind of turned into a side hustle. Some people collect vintage signs or gas station clocks. I go for rusted screwdrivers, old clamps, cracked socket sets. The grungier the better. You clean them, oil them, slot them in a wooden box, and people eat it up. So I saw this listing for a red metal toolbox, like the old Craftsman kind, with a bunch of tools included, listed for $30. No description, just a few quick pictures, mostly blurry. One of them showed the top tray full of pliers and random wrenches. The guy selling it didn't have a real name listed, just M. Key and a message button. I figured I'd shoot a quick offer and see if he'd meet in a public spot, but he messaged first. Said he'd give it to me for /$20, but I picked it up that day. Sent the address and said, just knock on the side door. Didn't ask questions. Didn't even wait for me to confirm. Just dropped the info and dipped. I drove over later that afternoon. It was this squat little house kind of tucked between two auto body shops in a part of town that looks like it stopped getting maintained back in 2003. One of those places with chain link fences but no dogs. The house had a weird vibe even from the street. The paint was peeling in these long strips, and the side door didn't have a real doorknob, just one of those sliding bolts like on a bathroom stall. I knocked. No one answered. I was about to knock again when the door creaked open just enough for a hand to stick out holding the toolbox. I didn't even get to see the guy's face. He said, 20 real flat. I handed him a 20 and he shoved the box into my chest and closed the door. That was it. I got back to my truck and set the box in the passenger seat. Thing was heavy. It rattled when I moved it, like there was more stuff inside than what I saw in the pics. I figured maybe I scored extra parts or drill bits or something. I didn't even open it until I got home. Soon as I flipped the lid, I could tell something was off. Yeah, the top tray had the tools from the picture. Pliers, wrenches, a rusted tape measure. But underneath the tray there was this compartment that was duct taped shut. Not like just taped for moving or storage. Like sealed, gray tape wrapped around it in an X covering the latch. Looked like someone really didn't want it opened. And now it was in my kitchen. I peeled the tape off slow, trying not to bend the metal. The latch popped open on the second try and I lifted the flap. Inside was a folded towel, not clean. Had a big dark stain right in the middle that looked brown, almost reddish. I unwrapped it like I was defusing a bomb, half expecting something to crawl out. Inside was a burner phone, one of those cheap prepaid things. It was dusty, the screen cracked. Next to it was a folded piece of paper with a phone number written on it in thick black marker. No name, no explanation. Just 10 digits large across the page. And below that, stuffed into the corner of the compartment like it had been jammed in as an afterthought, was a police badge. Real one too, not some Halloween plastic thing. It had weight to it. Said Special Investigator across the top and had a name I didn't recognize. The badge number was scratched across the front like someone had tried to remove it, but you could still read it if you held it to the light just right. And then I saw the zip ties. 2 of them, thick industrial ones, tucked under the badge. One was bent like it had been used already, cut at an angle. The other was brand new, still looped. I just stood there staring at everything for a few minutes, brain trying to catch up. Nothing in that box made sense together. It was like a box of someone's worst day, packed away and handed off to me for $20. I pressed the power button on the phone, and to my surprise it turned on. No passcode. Just lit up and went straight to the home screen. There were 3 contacts saved, one named C, one named L, and one labeled X. No texts, no call log. Just those 3 names and a couple of old voicemails I didn't even want to play. One of the voicemails was just 6 seconds of silence. Another was breathing and a scraping noise, like something brushing against a mic. I didn't get through the third. I messaged MK on Marketplace. Just said, hey man, what's the deal with the phone in the box? He replied an hour later, don't open that part, nothing else. I tried to respond, but the message wouldn't send. His account was gone by morning. I kept the phone in a drawer for a few days. Didn't touch it, but every now and then it would buzz. Just once. No message, no call, just one buzz and then nothing. I turned it off completely, but it still creeped me out, like something was still half connected. A couple days later, I looked up the name on the badge. Turns out the guy was real. Read a few local news clippings. He went missing about 5 years ago. His car was found in a river 2 counties over. No body ever recovered. He was working some kind of internal case, but the details were sealed. The articles were all vague, full of quotes like off the grid and likely foul play. I haven't touched the badge since. I wrapped it back in the towel and put it in a locked toolbox in the basement. Not the one I bought, the one I already had. That one felt wrong now, like I'd taken something I shouldn't have. Sometimes I think about calling the number, just once, just to see who picks up. But I haven't. I don't think I ever will. Hell no. My whole apartment was kind of falling apart by the time I finally decided to replace the table. I've been eating off this wobbly IKEA thing I found in the curb when I first moved in, and it honestly looked like it had been through some kind of mild natural disaster. One leg was shorter than the others, and every time you tried to cut something tougher than a pancake, the whole thing would tilt like it was ready to die. I wasn't trying to get fancy or anything, just something solid that didn't look like trash. I didn't even care if it matched my chairs. So I went on Marketplace and started scrolling like I always do when I'm avoiding laundry or emails. That's when I saw Brittany's listing. Sturdy oak dining table, $70 must pick up. There was only one picture, taken at a weird angle. It looked old, but the kind of old that holds up, like the kind of table someone's grandparents would have, the kind you imagine covered in lasagna and Sunday newspapers. It had this carved edge and what looked like a weird heart shape etched into one side, right near the top corner. I actually thought it looked kind of cool. Brittany's profile looked legit, a bunch of normal posts. Dog pics, a few hiking photos, one of her holding of a fish. I messaged her and she got back super fast, told me I could come by that evening. She even offered to help me carry it if I brought a blanket to wrap it in. Chill, right? I showed it around 6. It was that time of evening when the sun's too low to be useful, but too bright to ignore. Her place was in a row of townhomes across from a middle school. Quiet, kind of boring. She opened the door before I could knock, smiling like she already knew I wasn't gonna be weird. Inside, the place smelled like laundry and something sweet, like sugar cookies or maybe one of those seasonal candles. The table was already near the door, and it looked way better in person. Heavy oak, solid legs, old but clean. No cracks, just some little scuffs like it had been used a lot but taken care of. We didn't talk much while moving it. Just the usual watch the corner, careful with the stairs, stuff like that. She didn't seem sketchy or nervous. Honestly, she looked like she was just ready to get rid of it. I handed her the cash, she said thanks, and that was that. I got the table home and had to rearrange my whole apartment just to fit it in the kitchen area. My place isn't that big, but the table kind of became the center of the room once I got it in. It was heavy as hell too. Took me like 20 minutes just to get it flipped upright and level. That's when I noticed the carving again, the little heart shape on the corner. It wasn't decorative like I thought. It wasn't part of the design. It was scratched in, deliberate but messy, like someone used a pocket knife or a nail to dig it out. The shape wasn't even clean. Looked like whoever did it was shaking. Didn't think too much of it at the time. That weekend I had some friends over. Nothing wild, just pizza and drinks and sitting around talking about nothing. One of my friends, Jules, took a picture of her drink and a table and posted it to her story. I didn't even notice until she tagged me later that night. The next morning, I woke up to a DM from someone I didn't know. No profile pic, just a message. Where did you get that table? I almost ignored it, but they messaged again. This time with a screenshot of Jules' story and a side-by-side picture. The second photo looked like it was from a news article. It showed a girl, maybe 16, sitting at a table. Same shape, same legs, same heart carving in the background, clear as day. The post was from one of those missing persons pages, the kind people share and forget about in 2 days. The girl's name was Kyra. She'd been missing for over a year. The article said she was last seen leaving school. No leads, no suspects, nothing. I clicked through the photos. There were a few of her alone and one of her at the table. Her hands were on her lap, and she wasn't smiling. In fact, she looked like she'd been crying. Her eyes were puffy. Her posture was stiff. And that heart shape right behind her shoulder. I read the caption over and over. It didn't say where the photo was taken, just that it was from a private message believed to be from shortly before her disappearance. I sat there just staring at my table, the exact same table. I messaged Brittany again, asked her where she got the table, if she made it or if it was a family thing. She didn't reply. I waited a few hours and tried again. Still nothing. Then I clicked on her profile and realized she had blocked me. Gone, just like that. I started going back through her photos, tried searching her name online. Nothing recent. No sales history. No comments. I even tried using reverse image search on her profile pic and found it on another account. Different name, same dog. That account was private. I thought about calling someone. Police, maybe. But what was I gonna say? Hey, I want a table that looks like one from a missing girl's photo. So I tried to find the photo's original source. The post had been shared over 100 times, but it led back to a woman claiming to be Kara's aunt. I messaged her and just said, "I think I have the table in this photo." I sent a picture of mine, heart carving and all. She replied 2 hours later, one sentence. "Where did you get this?" I told her the name, Brittany, the town. The rough area. She didn't reply right away. When she did, it was just, "I'm contacting someone. Please don't move it." I didn't sleep that night. Every time I walked into the kitchen, I stared at that corner of the table, imagining who had sat there, what happened, why that heart was carved in it all. Was it her? Was it someone else marking it for some reason? A couple days passed. No update. The aunt never messaged back. Brittany's account disappeared entirely. The table's still in my kitchen. Every time I sit at it, I run my hand over the carving. And every time I think about the photo, that girl, that look in her eyes, I don't know what happened, or where that house was, or if the table was ever meant to be sold. But it's here now. It's mine. It was kind of an accident how I ended up with the mirror. I wasn't even looking for one. I was supposed to be finding a space heater. A room gets stupid cold at night, and I get this thing where if my feet are freezing, I can't sleep. But I got sidetracked scrolling Marketplace, as usual, and this mirror caught my eye. Like full length, wood frame, kind of old looking, but not too fancy. The listing just said, "Tall mirror, needs cleaning, $10." It had this dusty, almost gray tint in the pic, which weirdly made it look kind of cool, like something you'd see leaning in the back of an antique store with no price tag. The seller's name was Kyle. He had a picture of a motorcycle as his profile photo. His bio just said whatever. I messaged him, and he just sent back his address and after 5. No other info. I didn't even ask a question yet. But I figured whatever, it's $10. Worst case, it's cracked and I lose a trip. He lived out by the river in this area with a lot of old houses that either look super rich or like they're one windstorm away from falling apart. Kyle's place was more the second kind. Wood paneling, tiny front porch, random stuff piled near the door, coolers, buckets, an old fan. There were no lights on, even though it was already dark when I pulled up. I almost didn't go in, but he texted me side door as soon as I parked. I went around the side and saw the mirror leaning against the wall, wrapped in a ratty blanket. No one came out to meet me. I stood there for a minute like, do I just take it? But then the door opened just a crack and Kyle poked his head out. Dude looked tired, pale. He said, "It's $10, then stepped back inside. I handed him the cash and dragged the mirror to my car. He didn't say thanks or anything else. At home, I didn't even bring it into my room at first. I leaned it in the hallway because it was covered in this thin layer of grime, like it had been sitting in a garage for years. I took some window cleaner to it, figuring it'd take a few passes. First swipe across the glass came back black, like not just dust, actual residue. It was thick near the edges. But the weird thing was, the more I cleaned, the more the mirror started looking off. Not broken or warped, just too reflective. Like it showed too much detail, like you could see the texture in your eyes when you looked into it. Every tiny thing on your face. The kind of detail that makes you uncomfortable the longer you stare. I cleaned the top corner last, and that's where I saw it. In the upper right-hand corner of the glass, barely visible unless you stood at an angle, were words. Faint, like they'd been written in something oily and had dried into the surface. At first, I thought it was just smudges, but when I turned my head and let the light catch it, I read the words clear as anything. "Stop looking at me." I froze, like actual full-body freeze. I looked around like someone might be behind me even though I knew I was alone. Then I looked back at the mirror, thinking maybe it was a joke or something. But it wasn't scribbled like graffiti. The letters were careful. Clean, straight lines, not shaky or rushed. Whoever wrote it wanted it to be read. I tried wiping it off. Nothing. Sprayed more cleaner. Scrubbed it with a microfiber cloth. Still there. I called Kyle. No answer. I messaged him. "Hey, did you write something in the corner of the mirror?" He didn't open it. I waited 20 minutes, then tried again. Same thing. Next day, his profile was gone. I moved the mirror into my room because, honestly, part of me thought maybe I'd imagined it. It looked normal in the light, just a tall, kind of beat-up mirror. I left it leaning against the wall next to my desk and tried not to think about it. That night, I noticed it again. I was sitting at my desk playing music, and I looked over, just casually, and saw myself in the mirror. Except I wasn't moving. My real reflection was. Like my head turned a second slower. My reflection blinked late. It was subtle. If I hadn't been looking right at it, I probably wouldn't have caught it. I turned toward the mirror and stared for a while. Everything looked fine. But then I tilted my head again, and it happened. That same delay, like whoever was in the mirror had to think about how to copy me. I stood up and walked closer. The writing was back clearer now. Same words. Still faint, but way easier to see than before. Stop looking at me. I backed away and threw a blanket over the whole thing. Didn't even think. Just did it. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I turned over in bed, I expected to see movement through the blanket, like something shifting under there. I kept telling myself I was being dumb, that it was just a trick of the light or my brain doing that thing where it plays with shadows when you're tired. Next morning, I went to pull the blanket off. The writing was gone, like totally gone. I checked it at every angle, used a flashlight, nothing. The mirror looked totally clean again. I thought maybe I had been imagining it after all. Maybe I was tired. Maybe the glass had weird marks from moisture or clean fluid. So I left it uncovered, figured it was fine. That night, it got worse. I walked past the mirror and saw movement, not me, not a delay. Just something in the reflection. A figure, blurry and short, like someone crouched near the base. I spun around. Nothing there. I looked back. Nothing. But in the corner, upper right again, something new was written. He sees you. I covered it again. Didn't take it off the next day, or the day after. By the end of the week, the blanket was moving in the mornings, shifted. Not off, just wrinkled like something had pressed against it from the inside. I never saw it happen. It just kept ending up slightly different. I thought about throwing it out, but the trash guys won't pick up glass, and I didn't want to deal with explaining it to anyone if they found it broken. So I called this junk guy who hauls stuff off for cash. Told him to take it, no questions. He showed up, threw it in the back of his truck, and didn't ask anything. But before he drove off, he looked in his side mirror, then turned to me and said, "Did you see the writing on it?" I just shook my head. Didn't say a word. He nodded once and drove away. I haven't seen the mirror since, but sometimes when I pass by other mirrors, like in public bathrooms or fitting rooms, I feel it again. That delay. That half-second lag, like my reflections, still deciding what to do. And once in the corner of a gym mirror, I swear I saw it. I think I'm going mad. Alright, so I'm not a gamer, like, at all. I had a PlayStation 2 when I was a kid and used it mostly to watch DVDs and play Tony Hawk once a month, but that was it. The only reason I even bought a PlayStation was cause my roommate moved out and took the TV with him, and suddenly my apartment was way too quiet. I will do podcasts, and music just makes me feel weird when there's nothing else happening. I figured if I had a console, I could at least stream stuff or play dumb games to kill time. Something to fill the silence. I didn't want to spend a ton, so I checked Marketplace. I always do this thing where I search by lowest price first, even though I know 90% of the cheap stuff is garbage or already gone. But I scrolled for a while and found this listing that just said PlayStation 4, $100. Works great. It had one photo, kind of dark, but you could see the console, a controller, and some wires. The name on the account was Samantha, and she had one mutual friend with me, some girl I used to work with at the grocery store. I messaged her, and she replied almost instantly. Said she could meet me outside her place that evening, cash only. Her profile was super bare, but not in a sketchy way. Just one of those people who doesn't post much. I figured, hey, $100 a deal, and it's only a 10-minute drive. So I went. Her building was this big old apartment complex with faded numbers and a buzzing light over the entrance. You know the kind. Long hallways, no decorations, carpets that probably haven't been cleaned in 20 years. She met me in the lobby with the box already taped up. Didn't even ask me to check it. She just smiled, said, "Hope you enjoy," took the cash, and went right back upstairs before I could say anything else. Kind of weird, but not suspicious. I got home, set everything up. Console worked fine. Booted right up. Controller synced. No issues. I started downloading some stuff. Netflix, Spotify, one of those free games I was never gonna actually play. While it was installing, I poked around the system files just out of boredom. There were a bunch of video clips saved. I figured they were game replays or screen recordings. I clicked on one. It wasn't a game. The first video was night vision footage. Fuzzy green and gray. The angle looked handheld, but steady. Someone was walking down a sidewalk slowly, breathing audible over the mic. They paused at a gate, looked up at a second-floor window. Then the video ended. 15 seconds total. I thought maybe it was from a game I didn't recognize. Some survival horror thing with a realistic style. But the second video had the same setting, same sidewalk, same gate, but it went on longer. The camera zoomed into the window. The lights inside were off, but you could just make out the shape of a bed. Someone was sleeping in it. Still, part of me thought maybe it was fake, like some kind of art project. People make weird stuff, but then I clicked the third one. This time the person with the camera wasn't outside. They were inside the house. You could see a hallway dimly lit. The camera panned down to a keychain in someone's hand. One of those hotel-style plastic tags with a number on it. Then they opened a door. Inside was a living room. The TV was on volume low. Someone was asleep on the couch. The camera didn't move for a long time, just stayed fixed on the person sleeping. No sound, no movement, just watching. The timestamp said the video was almost 20 minutes long. I clicked through a few more. They were all like that. Different houses, different people, always at night, always silent. Some were short, some lasted forever. One of them was just a camera pointed at a door, like the person filming was waiting for it to open. I have all the capture info. They weren't downloaded. They were saved directly to the system. Same username across all of them, SamX4. I tried to delete them. The system gave me an error message. I tried again, same thing. The delete option was there, but nothing happened when I clicked it. I messaged Samantha, asked if the console had any issues. She replied 2 hours later with what kind of issues. I didn't mention the videos right away. I just said it was acting weird, freezing during playback, which was true, she replied. It does that sometimes. Just let it finish watching. I stared at the message. Let it finish watching. I asked her what she meant. She didn't answer. I said another. Nothing. By the next morning, her profile was gone. I unplugged the console, boxed it back up, and stuck it in the closet. I didn't want to deal with it, but I couldn't stop thinking about the videos. I'd read once that some older game consoles could record if you used a share feature, but that required you to hit buttons. None of these looked like that. And why would anyone keep those videos saved? I ended up opening the console again and plugging it into my laptop using a capture card. I thought maybe I could extract the files or find a way to wipe them. When I accessed the storage through my PC, I found a hidden folder, not named anything weird, just library. Inside were dozens more clips. Not just from houses, from cars, offices, backyards, always at night, always filmed without the person knowing. One of them had audio. You could hear the breathing again. Shaky, fast, like whoever was filming was nervous or excited. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about the footage, the calmness of it, the way the camera never rushed, like it had time. I still haven't turned the console on again. It's in a box under my bed now. I've thought about throwing it away or smashing it or dropping it off at some pawn shop. But every time I try, I just don't. Part of me feels like I have to keep it, like I'm responsible for whatever's on it, like it's proof of something. Every once in a while, I'll hear a noise from under the bed. Just a small click. Probably the plastic shifting in the box. Probably nothing. But I still wonder who read those files before me. If Samantha ever watched them. If she made them. Or if the console did. This all happened during that stretch of time when I was trying to get back into camping. I used to go a lot with my dad before he passed, but it had been years and I got this random itch to be outside again. Not like full wilderness survival or anything, just weekend trips, state parks, that kind of thing. I already had a sleeping bag and a bunch of random gear packed away from college, so all I needed was a decent tent. I didn't have the money to buy new, so I went looking for something used. Marketplace was my first stop, obviously. That's where I found this tent Dylan was selling. Big enough for two people, supposedly lightly used, only $30. The photos showed it all folded up, not set up, which should have been a red flag. But I figured maybe the guy just didn't have the space to pitch it and take pics. The brand was decent, and he said it came with stakes and a rainfly. I messaged him and we set it up for pickup the same day. He lived on the edge of town near those newer cookie-cutter houses with gravel yards and solar panels. I pulled up around 5 p.m., and he was already standing outside with the tent packed in its bag, just chilling in the driveway like he'd been waiting. Dylan looked like every guy you see holding a Red Bull in a gas station. Gray hoodie, sweatpants, beanie, even though it was warm. He didn't say much. "Just you, Dylan?" I said yeah, handed him the cash, and he gave me a little nod. When I asked if he ever had any issues with it, he just shrugged and said, "Not really. Zipper sticks sometimes." That was it. I brought it home and figured I'd set it up in my backyard to test it out before heading anywhere. My backyard is not huge or anything, just a patch of grass with a fence around it. I rolled the tent out, and right away I noticed the duct tape. It was all over the bottom of the tent in weird stripes. Not on the outside where you'd expect water damage, but on the inside floor, like someone had taped something down or tried to patch up tears. The tape looked old. Dusty, starting to curl at the edges. And it wasn't just the floor. Some of the mesh near the top had little repairs too, clumsy ones. It didn't look like someone trying to preserve a nice tent. It looked like someone had been trying to keep it together with whatever they had. Still, it went up fine. Poles were a little bent, but nothing crazy. I crawled inside to check the seams and noticed something else, scratches. All over the inside walls. Not huge ones, not gashes, just hundreds of short little lines. Thin, deep enough to feel with your fingers. Some vertical, some diagonal, like claw marks, but from something small. I sat there for a few minutes, running my hand over them. The weird part was they didn't look like accidental tears. They were all on the inside, in the same spot someone's knees or hands would rest if they were sitting upright. There were no signs of animals, no fur, no droppings, no smell. I kept trying to tell myself maybe it was just from bags or boots dragging over time. But some of the scratches were on the ceiling. I texted Dylan. Just asked, "Hey, any idea what caused the inside to be all scratched up?" He replied like 10 minutes later, "Wasn't animals." I read that twice. Just sat there staring at it. So I asked, and what was it from? He took longer to reply this time, almost half an hour. Then he said, "Someone tried to leave." That's all. No follow-up. No haha or kidding. Just someone tried to leave. I didn't respond. I waited till it got dark, and then I packed the tent up again. Folded it the exact same way it came, shoved it back in the bag. But before I zipped it, I checked the inside one more time. That's when I found the message. It was written on the inside of the door flap in tiny blue pen. Almost too light to see unless your face was right up against the fabric. It said, "It's not locked if you don't sleep." I don't know why, but I felt sick after reading it, like actual gut-turning nausea. I put the tent away and didn't tell anyone. Next weekend, I went on the trip anyway. Borrowed a tent from my cousin. We hiked out to this quiet little clearing and set up camp, built a fire, made food, drank some beers. Normal stuff. But I kept thinking about that sentence. I kept picturing what kind of night leads someone to write that. Alone, in a tent, while scratching at the walls. I brought the tent back out a week later just to look at it again. Thought maybe I was exaggerating it in my head. Thought maybe the scratches weren't as bad as I remembered. But when I set it up, I found something new. The tape had peeled back a little. One of the pieces on the floor. I pulled it up. Underneath was a stain. Brownish, spreading like it had seeped into the fabric. Smelled faintly sour. Not mold, not sweat. Something else. I peeled back more tape. Found more stains. Some looked like shapes. One looked like a handprint. Not clean. Not sharp. But a smudge, a suggestion. As if someone had pressed their palm into the fabric hard over and over. I texted Dylan again. "You said someone tried to leave." "Who?" He didn't reply. 2 days later, his profile was gone. Now the tent's in my garage, still in the bag, still with the tape half peeled and a message inside. I haven't thrown it out. I don't know why. Part of me wants to set it up again, sleep in it, stay awake and see what happens. The other part of me thinks whoever read that message the first time, maybe they stayed awake too long. I'll be real. I've never been good with pets. I had a turtle in middle school that escaped somehow, a hamster that bit me every time I touched it, and a cat that ran away like 3 days after I adopted it. So I figured fish might finally be the way to go. Quiet, low effort, something to stare at while I zoned out after work. Seemed chill. I didn't want to spend too much, so I hit up Marketplace looking for tanks. There were a bunch of crusty ones with no lids or full-on setups selling for way more than I wanted to drop. Then I found this one from someone named Courtney. She had this super long post that said something like, "Vintage tank, still holds water, gravel included, make an offer." The photo showed a rectangular tank with that classic brown plastic trim and a bag of blue gravel next to it. I figured I could grab a cheap filter at the pet store and be good to go. Courtney lived just outside of town in one of those little neighborhoods where every house looks like it was built at the same time. Cookie-cutter streets with mismatched lawns, some overgrown, some trimmed like a golf course. Her house was yellow real bright, with a faded wind chime on the porch that sounded weirdly off-key every time the breeze hit. She opened the door holding the tank in both arms like she was handing me a baby. It looked heavier than I expected, already filled halfway with water and sloshing around like it was impatient. The gravel was already inside, and she taped a bag of fake plants to the lid. I asked if it had been used recently, and she said, "I took the fish out this morning." Didn't say what kind. Didn't smile. Just handed it to me, told me to rinse it, and said she hoped I had a peaceful time with it. That's the exact phrase she used. I remember it cause it sounded weird. I got the tank home and set it up on a little folding table in my room. Didn't have any fish yet, just wanted to get it clean and filled and let it settle. I poured the water out in the bathtub and tilted it to rinse the gravel when something small rolled out and hit the porcelain. It made a weird sound, soft but sharp, like a marble wrapped in cotton. It was a tooth, like a human one. I stared at it for a full minute, just sitting there at the bottom of the tub. Not a chip or a fragment, a whole tooth. Molar, maybe. Still had a root attached. Looked old, yellowed, but not fake. I pulled the rest of the gravel out and dumped it into a colander to rinse it in the sink. As I stirred it around, more stuff surfaced. Another tooth. A small silver ring. Some kind of pebble that looked too white to be a rock. I picked it up. It was a piece of bone. Real bone, not decoration. Porous on the inside. I kept rinsing, and near the bottom, I found a small Ziploc bag. Sealed. Inside was a folded piece of paper and something dark. I opened the bag carefully and read the paper. It said June 3rd in blocky handwriting. That was it. No names, no other markings. The object inside the bag looked like a dried-out chunk of something. Hard to tell exactly. Dark brownish, like old jerky. I didn't touch it. I sealed the bag again and set it on the counter. I texted Courtney right away. Just said, "Hey, I found some weird stuff in the gravel. Do you know what this is?" She read it but didn't reply. A few minutes later, she blocked me. I sat there at my kitchen table with the tank half filled in this Ziploc bag next to me, wondering if I should call someone. But what was I even gonna say? Hey, I bought a fish tank and it came with bones. It sounded like a prank. The next day I brought the bag to my coworker, Jess. She's into forensic science stuff and took some classes before switching majors. I didn't tell her where it came from, just said I found it while cleaning. She looked at the bone and said it definitely wasn't from a fish. Said the texture looked human, but she'd need to run real tests to be sure. I didn't let her keep it. Something about that felt wrong. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the bag. June 3rd. What did that even mean? Anniversary. Deadline. I Googled missing persons in the area tied to that date, but there were too many. No one with the name Courtney popped up. I went back to the Marketplace listing, but it was already gone. Her profile didn't exist anymore either. I checked the URL from the original chat, and it just redirected to the homepage, like she vanished. I set the tank up anyway, after scrubbing it with bleach and boiling the gravel. Got a couple guppies and one of those alligators. But it never felt right. The fish never swam much. It just hovered near the bottom, barely moving. And every few days, the bag would show back up on my kitchen counter. I swear I threw it away. More than once. Took it out to the dumpster. Watched the truck haul the bin off. But somehow I'd come home and there it was again. Ziploc sealed, June 3rd. I started locking it in a drawer. Then the drawer started sticking. Not jamming, just resisting, like it didn't want to be opened or closed. I finally moved the whole drawer out and stored it in the shed behind my place. Haven't touched it since. The fish are still alive, but the tank started fogging up from the inside every morning. Not normal condensation, more like someone breathed on the glass. Long smears that don't match where the fish swim. I clean it, and the next day it's back. I haven't used Marketplace anymore, not even for furniture. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't rinsed the gravel. If I just poured the water in, added some fish, and gone about my day. Would I have ever found the bag? The teeth? The ring? And why June 3rd? I didn't look up what happened on that date this year. Trust me, I don't want to know. It started cause I got into film photography, not in the trendy way. Like I wasn't trying to be all retro and artsy about it. I just stumbled across this beat up 35mm camera at a flea market, shot a roll for fun, and the colors came out weird and dreamy in a way my phone never could. That was it. Hooked. Every paycheck I'd blow a chunk on expired film or random gear, convincing myself it was cheaper than therapy. So when I saw Josh's listing on Marketplace, vintage camera, one roll inside, untested, I jumped at it. The pictures weren't great, but it looked like a Canon AE1, which is one of those solid old school models people still swear by. He only wanted $40 for it, which was wild considering those usually go for double. I messaged him. He answered quick, told me to come by that night. Didn't ask any questions, just sent me a time and an address. I drove out around 7. It was summer, so the light hung around a little longer. His place was on this road that curves up near the edge of town where it gets real quiet and hilly. The houses up there all look like they used to be cabins before people got money and started pretending they were rustic. Josh came out before I even parked. He was barefoot, holding the camera in both hands like it was something he didn't want in the house anymore. He didn't say much, just, "It works, probably," and handed it over when I gave him the cash. I asked what kind of film was in it, and he said, "No clue. Been in there a while." Then he turned around and went back inside before I could say anything else. I sat in my car for a minute just looking at it. The body was clean, a little scuffed around the grip. The roll inside was definitely old, Fuji from what I could tell. I figured I'd shoot the rest and get it developed just to see what came out. I finished the roll over the weekend, took a few shots around the park, some at night from my roof, nothing crazy. Then I dropped it off at the photo lab near my job, told them to text me when it was ready. 3 days later, I pick up the envelope. You know the feeling? Opening those prints, flipping through them like you're unwrapping a little mystery. But this time it didn't feel right. The first few photos were mine. The park, the skyline, blurry light trails. But then they started changing. There were photos I didn't take. All of them were from inside houses. Some looked like they were taken through glass or around a doorway, like the camera was hidden. In one, a woman stood in her kitchen mid-laugh like someone had called her name. Another showed a man brushing his teeth, seen through a crack in the bathroom door. The angle was low, as if the camera had been placed near the floor. None of them looked posed. The lighting in some was harsh, like a flash had gone off, and the subject didn't even know. A kid sitting on the floor in pajamas watching TV. A man pulling a curtain shut. A girl in a bathtub, hair wet, looking straight at the lens. That one made my stomach drop. It didn't look like she knew she was being photographed, but her eyes were wide, mouth slightly open, like she had just realized someone was there. I flipped through the rest, hands shaking. The last photo wasn't a person. It was a window, taken from outside looking in. The blinds were half drawn, and there was a shape in a reflection, just barely visible. It looked like a hand pressed to the glass. I read that part again. The hand. It wasn't clear, but it was there. I looked back through them, hoping maybe it was some weird art project, but the timestamps didn't match. Some were from winter, some from different seasons, different years even. And the places didn't match either. One kitchen had tile, another had wood floors, some bathrooms had old fixtures, others were modern. Whoever took these, they weren't in one house. They were in a lot of them. I drove home, the envelope on the passenger seat. I kept glancing at it like it might open itself. Back at my apartment, I sat on the floor with the lights off, flipping through them again. I noticed something in the photo of the girl in the tub. Behind her on the counter was a bottle of lotion I recognized. Not 'cause I use it, but 'cause it's only sold at this tiny grocery store near where I live. I went there the next morning, just walked around, looked at people. I didn't recognize her. But I did see the camera again. Not the exact one I bought, but the same model, same strap, same brand. Hanging from the neck of a guy standing by the freezer section. He was tall, wearing a dark hoodie even though it was hot out. He didn't look at me, but I swear I saw his eyes flick to my reflection in the freezer door. I went home and messaged Josh. Told him what I found. Asked if he took the photos or if someone else did. He replied an hour later, "Don't worry, I moved." That was it, nothing else. I tried messaging again. His account was gone. I burned the photos. All of them. Took them to the alley behind my building and set them on fire in a metal tray. The flame hissed like something wet was inside them. But the weirdest part, when I checked the camera again later that night, there was a new roll loaded. I hadn't put one in. I haven't developed it. It's still sitting there. Sometimes when I walk past my window, I check the glass, just in case someone's pointing one back. I never planned on getting a crib secondhand. That was like one of the few things I swore I'd buy new when I found out I was gonna be a dad. But things didn't go the way I thought they would. My ex moved out before the baby was born, I lost my job 2 months later, and everything just kind of started spiraling. So when my sister sent me this link on Facebook Marketplace for a crib going for free, I didn't ask too many questions. The post was from someone named Amanda. She had a bunch of other listings. Baby clothes, toys, even a changing table, all marked free or really cheap. The description under the crib just said, "Never used, pickup only." There were 3 photos. One was of the crib all set up, another of the mattress leaning against a wall, and one of the instruction manual, which looked like it had been read and folded about 100 times. I messaged her that night and she replied within 5 minutes. Said I could come pick it up anytime before 9 p.m., gave me the address, and said to text when close. That was it. Super short, kind of cold, but I wasn't in a place to be picky. Amanda lived in this 2-story house on a street I'd never been down before, near the edge of town where there's more trees and streetlights. Her place looked normal enough. White siding, clean porch, kids' toys in the yard, but something about it felt quiet, not peaceful quiet. Just still, like no one had been outside in a long time. I texted her when I parked and she came out right away, carrying the mattress. She looked tired, not in a normal way, but like her body was a prey out of habit. She handed me the mattress and pointed to the crib pieces leaning against the porch railing. I asked if it was really never used, and she said, "We put it together, but that was it." Then she turned around and went back inside without another word. I got the crib home and started putting it together in my living room. It was one of those wooden ones with the curved back and white paint. There were little dents here and there, but nothing major. I got it standing after about an hour, then dropped the mattress in. That's when I noticed the marks. Bite marks, small round ones, all on the top rail. They were too short to be from a pet, too high up for it to be a toddler gnawing from the inside. It looked human, like someone had been biting down and hard. There were little indents, and in some places the paint was chipped away like whoever did it kept going long after it started to hurt. I stood there staring at them for a while. I wanted to believe maybe a kid did it just messing around. But Amanda said it had never been used. Her exact words. I lifted the mattress out to see if there was any damage to the base and saw something tucked into the slats underneath. At first I thought it was trash, but when I reached in and pulled it out, it was a stack of photos. Real ones. Glossy prints, like from one of those instant printers. They were bent, water-stained, but still visible. All of them were of a toddler. Same girl in every photo. Big eyes, dark curls, maybe 2 years old. In most of the pictures, she was crying. Red cheeks, tears on her face. Not the kind of crying you snap a pic of to remember. These were raw, not posed. Taken from close up, and not at happy moments. A few were taken from above, like someone was standing over her while she sat in the crib. Others were from the side, through the slats. There was one where she was lying down, clutching the rail, face red from screaming. The last photo was different. No kid in that one. Just the empty crib, the mattress flipped up, and a dark stain in the middle of the wood. I put the photos down and backed away. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't about to use that crib anymore. Not after that. I messaged Amida again, just wrote, "Hey, there are photos under the mattress. Is everything okay?" She saw the message, never replied. I tried searching her name. Her profile was still up, but it had no recent posts. The last thing she listed for sale was gone by the next day. Then her account disappeared completely. I kept the crib up for one more night. I didn't sleep much. Every time I walked through the living room, I glanced over at it, expecting to see something move. There was this cold spot around it, like the air just refused to settle. In the morning, I took it apart, stuffed all the pieces back in the box, and left it on the curb with a free sign. I figured someone would take it. It was still in good shape on the outside. Still looked normal if you didn't know what was tucked under the mattress before. But by the next evening, it was still there. I checked again the next morning. Same spot. No one had touched it. The sign was gone. Just the crib. Sitting in the exact position I left it, like it didn't want to leave. I ended up driving it to the dump myself, tossed it onto the pile and didn't look back. The photos. I burned those in the kitchen sink. Sometimes I still think about that last one. The crib with the flipped mattress and the stain. I try to tell myself it was something harmless. Juice. Paint. Anything but what it probably was. But what sticks with me more than anything is the bite marks. Because no kid does that. At least not from inside. Alright, so I was doing this whole build my dream desk setup thing last fall. I got a new monitor, some LED strip lights, a fake plant I'll never water, all that stuff. But my chair sucked. Like it had no back support and squeaked every time I moved, and I'd had it since high school. I figured if I was gonna be sitting at my desk for 5 hours a day doom scrolling and pretending to work, I should at least be comfortable. New chairs were stupid expensive, so I checked Marketplace and found this post that just said, "Office chair, adjustable, decent shape, $30." The photos were whatever, a little blurry, but it looked like a normal high-back swivel chair. Kinda basic, but had armrests and a headrest, which was all I needed. The seller's name was Logan. His profile had no info, no pics, but he replied to my message fast. Told me he was downsizing and to come by any time before dark. Sent me an address with no other context. I figured, okay, maybe he's moving or something. Seemed chill enough. He lived in a neighborhood about 20 minutes outside town, the kind with wide roads and big boxy houses that all look like someone built them with copy-paste. The kind of place where lawns are perfect, but no one ever seems to be outside. I pulled up and the garage was already open. Logan waved me in like we were old friends, even though we never met. He was tall, looked kinda tired, maybe late 30s, wearing a t-shirt with a tech company logo I didn't recognize. The chair was already sitting near the garage door. It looked newer in person. Black leather, or maybe fake leather, hard to tell. Clean, no major tears. He spun it around once like he was showing it off. I sat in it real quick to test the height and lean. It worked fine. Quiet. Comfortable. I handed him the cash and he gave this half smile like he was relieved. Then he said something weird, not loud, just under his breath. "You're probably better off not flipping it over." I laughed like he was joking. He didn't laugh back. Just nodded and walked back inside, leaving me in the driveway. Okay. I got the chair home and set it up in my room. Sat in it for like an hour playing games and messing with cable management. Felt great. Best $30 I'd spent in a while, but this comment stuck with me. That night, I got curious. I tipped the chair forward, trying to see what he meant. Nothing weird at first, just some scuffs on the wheels, a bit of dust under the seat. But when I tilted it all the way back and looked at the bottom of the seat, I saw something I did not expect. There was a metal bracket, flat and bolted directly to the wood under the cushion. Attached to that was a heavy-duty ankle shackle, like the kind you see in old prison movies, not a joke. Real steel rust around the hinge, and a bit of chain still hanging off it. Tucked into the padding around it were strands of hair. Long ones, stuck in the cracks. I just stared at it, felt my stomach turn. I read over that part again in my head. You were probably better off not flipping it over. He wasn't kidding. He was warning me. But why sell the chair at all? Why not just get rid of it? I looked closer. The bolts weren't factory. They were added later. You could see where the wood had been drilled, not cleanly either. It looked rushed, like someone tried to make sure it stayed hidden but didn't care how messy it was underneath. I took pictures, sent one to my friend Eli, who's into weird gear and old tech stuff. He texted back, "Dude, that's not a game mod, that's real. What the hell is that from?" I didn't answer. I flipped the chair back upright and just sat there for a while, not sure what to do. Part of me wanted to go back and confront Logan, ask him what happened. Who it belonged to? Why the hell anyone would need to shackle someone to a desk chair? But I didn't. Instead, I tried to look him up again. His marketplace profile was gone. Same with the listing. I still had the address though, so the next day I drove just to see. The garage was shut. No cars out front. Curtains all drawn. The for sale sign was up now, stuck in the lawn with a fresh real estate flyer. Looked like he was already gone. I thought of reporting it. The chair, the shackle. But how would that even go? I bought a chair, found something weird on it. Don't know who it belonged to or what it was used for. I didn't have any names, no dates, no real info, just a chair with a secret. I didn't throw it away. I know how that sounds, but I didn't. I moved it into the storage closet at the end of the hall and replaced it with an old wooden dining chair I'd been using as a spare. Sometimes, late at night, I think I hear the wheels moving. Just slightly. A shift. A creak. Like the chair's still in use even in the dark. I checked it again last week. The shackle's still there. The chain is rustier now. The hair's gone. I didn't remove it. I still don't know why Logan kept it so long. Or why he let it go for so cheap. Maybe he just didn't want to be the last person who owned it. Maybe he was hoping someone else would take the weight off his hands. And maybe that's me now. So I've always had this habit of collecting luggage. Not like fancy name brand stuff. I'm talking old suitcases. The kind with brass clasps and that weird stiff fabric that smells like the attic. I don't even travel much. I just like the look of them. I stack it in the corner of my room like furniture. Most people don't get it, but whatever. Everyone collects something. I was scrolling Marketplace one night just for fun, not even looking for luggage specifically, and I saw this listing pop up. Vintage suitcase set, $50, minor wear. The photo showed 3 matching cases, all dark green, kind of military looking but clean. They had these metal corners and leather handles, and the smallest one had initials stamped near the lock. MB. The seller was Megan. I didn't recognize the name, but her profile looked normal. Lots of photos of parks and iced coffee and a cat sitting on windowsills. She answered quick when I messaged. Said she was letting go some old stuff, and if I could come before 8, they were mine. I drove out there around 6:30. Her place was in one of those new townhome developments where everything feels temporary. You know what I mean? Fake brick, identical doors, no trees. The kind of neighborhood that's trying too hard to feel lived in. She answered the door holding the smallest suitcase already, smiling, but not like she was happy to see me. More like she was trying to convince herself this was normal. "They're in the garage," she said, and waved me around the side. The other 2 were sitting at a table inside. She said she hadn't opened them in a while. Said they used to be her aunt's or something. When I asked if they still locked, she shrugged and said, "Some of them, but they're empty." I handed her the cash and she nodded like she was checking off a box. "Take care of them," she said, and then she was gone. Back inside, door shut before I even got all the cases in the car. At home, I lined them up in my room and opened the smallest one first. It was empty, like she said. Just that old fabric lining, slightly faded with the smell of dust and metal. The lock didn't work anymore, but the clasp clicked shut nice and tight. The medium-sized one had a few scraps of paper inside. A torn receipt, a faded baggage tag from some airline that doesn't even exist anymore. Nothing weird. The big one was different. It took a second to open. The lock was stiff, and the lid stuck like something was pressing against it from the inside. When I finally forced it open, the first thing I saw was the folder. It was tucked into the side pocket, a manila folder slightly warped from heat or moisture. I opened it and found passports. Not one, not two. A stack. Maybe 10 total. Different names, different countries. Some were clearly old, one expired in 2003, but some were newer. The photos all showed women. Different ages, ethnicities, hairstyles, but there was something similar in all their faces, like they were tired, not in a regular way. In a way that said they weren't standing in line at the DMV when those pictures were taken. Under the passports was a folded sheet of notebook paper. On it was a handwritten list. Names. All women's names. First names only, all down one side of the page. Next to each one was a date, and next to that a country. Some were circled. Some had an X through them. One line near the middle had been scratched out completely. Hard. Like whoever did it really didn't want it read again. I sat there just holding that paper, not sure what I was looking at. I flipped it over, checked for anything else. Writing, symbols, nothing. But I'd noticed the paper smelled weird. Not musty like the suitcase. More like plastic and copper. I checked the rest of the suitcase. Under the lining, someone had hidden a small Ziploc bag taped to the frame. Inside was a SIM card. No phone. Just this as I am. That's when I started to feel it, that buzz in your spine when something's not just weird, but wrong. I messaged Megan. Just, hey, found some stuff in the suitcase. Did you mean to leave it in there? She replied after a few minutes. What did you find? I told her about the passports in the note. She left me on read. Profile still there. Just no response. Next day, her listing was gone. I checked the conversation again, and her name had changed to FB user. Deleted account. I showed the list to my friend Max, who's into true crime forums and all that. He said some of the names looked familiar. Maybe connected to disappearances from a few years ago, but nothing confirmed. Too many common names. I tried searching the initials, MB, from the suitcase, but nothing useful came up. Too vague. Could be anyone. I put the list and the passports in a drawer, locked it. Haven't opened it since. But every now and then I get these spam texts from random international numbers. Just symbols or blank messages. One has a single word. Remember. I don't know what it means. I still have the suitcases. They look good stacked in the corner. Most people never ask what's inside. They just think I'm into vintage stuff. Which I guess I am. Just not like this. This happened last year when I was still trying to make my apartment look like I had my life together. You know that stage, where you're pretending your place is grown up, but your couch has a hole in it and your coffee table is just an old trunk someone left behind. I just moved into a one-bedroom after splitting from my ex, and I didn't have much furniture. I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor and stacking books in piles because I didn't have shelves yet. So I went on Marketplace thinking I'd just grab something cheap and solid. I didn't care what it looked like. I just needed something to put my stuff on that wasn't the ground. After scrolling for like 10 minutes, I found a listing for a vintage bookshelf posted by some guy named Noah. It looked sturdy, maybe 4 feet tall, simple wood frame with 3 shelves and a slightly curved top. Kinda ugly if I'm being honest, but fine. The post said, minor wobble, still stands, /$20. I messaged him, and he got back to me almost right away. Said I could come pick it up that night if I brought cash. Gave me an address, no small talk. I asked it would fit in a set-in, and he just replied, yeah. Noah lived in this weird part of the city that feels half abandoned, industrial buildings next to random apartment complexes. Empty streets, way too quiet after dark. His building looked like an old office converted into loss, but not in a cool way, just big windows and peeling paint. When I got there, he buzzed me in without saying anything. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor, and the door to his place was already cracked open. I knocked anyway. He came out, pointed at the bookshelf sitting by the wall, and said, that's it. Then he walked back into his apartment without waiting for a reply. I stared at the bookshelf for a second. It looked fine. Dusty, but not broken. I lifted one end and realized it was lighter than it looked. Easy enough to carry. As I started dragging it toward the elevator, I noticed the back panel was a little loose, like it had been pried away and stapled back down. not something I cared about in the moment. I just wanted to get it home. Once I got it inside, I set it up in the corner of the window and started wiping it down. There were these tiny scratches all over the top, like someone had been spinning coins on it over and over. I didn't think anything of it until I tried to push on the back panel to tighten it. That's when the whole panel popped forward. Not all the way off, just enough to reveal the gap behind it. There was something stuck inside. I pulled the panel loose and looked closer. Inside the frame, between the wood and the backing, were Polaroids. Dozens of them, taped directly to the inner wall, all slightly overlapping. They weren't organized, no labels, no dates. All of them were of women. Not smiling, not posing. Just there, unconscious. Some looked like they were asleep, but others, no. You could tell. The way their arms hung. The way their mouths were open, not right. They were in different places. Couches, bedrooms, floors. Some in bathtubs. Most of the rooms looked the same, though. The same wallpaper. Same shelves. One had a mirror in the background that showed a figure holding the camera. It was blurry, but you could make out a hoodie, long sleeves, gloved hands. My stomach flipped. I backed away from the bookshelf, just staring. The Polaroids were taped in layers. When I peeled one off, there were more underneath. Some faded, others still glossy. One of them showed a girl I recognized. Not personally, but from the news. She'd been missing for almost a year. Her name was Cammy. There were flyers still around my neighborhood. I remember because her face was hard to forget. Big eyes, dyed hair, always described as last seen leaving a friend's party. There she was, in one of the photos. Curled up on a mattress, eyes closed. Pale. I stopped looking after that. I didn't call the cops. I should have, I know. But I didn't. I just shoved the backing back into place, pushed the shelf against the wall, and sat down on the floor trying to figure out what the hell I'd brought into my home. I tried messaging No again. Just said, "Hey, I found something in the bookshelf. We need to talk." The message wouldn't send. His profile was gone. I didn't sleep that night. I kept imagining someone standing outside my window, watching to see if I'd figured it out. I kept looking at the bookshelf, thinking maybe it had moved a little when I wasn't looking. The next day, I took the whole thing apart, removed the Polaroids carefully, and slid them into a shoebox. I didn't look at them again. I took the box to the park and buried it under a tree. I don't know why I didn't burn it. I just didn't want it in the house. The bookshelf's still here. I don't use it. It's empty. Just sits there quiet. But sometimes I swear I hear a creak from it at night, like it's shifting under the weight of something that isn't there anymore. I don't collect furniture off Marketplace anymore, even if it looks normal, even if it's free. What a joke. What the freaks? This one's kinda dumb, or it started that way. I've been trying to fix up my garage into like a hangout spot. Nothing serious. Just a couch, some posters, maybe a mini fridge eventually. I wanted to get a stereo in there so I could play old CDs I still had from high school. Yeah, I know, don't laugh. I had this dumb plan to set it up like a fake radio station where I could just sit there and pretend it was still 2006 or whatever. Anyway, I was looking on Marketplace for a cheap stereo and saw one posted by someone named Haley. The listing just said vintage stereo plus demo CD. Free, come grab. Free always makes me skeptical, but I clicked and looked at the pictures. It wasn't like a little portable speaker. It was one of those boxy silver ones with a volume knob the size of a golf ball, speakers with real wire hookups, and a CD tray that popped out with that satisfying mechanical sound. I messaged her mostly just to see if it was still there. She said yeah, and that she could leave it on the porch for me to grab. Said she was home but didn't feel like talking. I figured fine, less awkward for me. She gave me the address and said, "Don't forget to play the CD. It's hilarious." She lived in this brick house on a street that was way too quiet for a Friday night. Porch light was on. The stereo was sitting on this tiny table next to the door, already in a box with the wires wrapped neatly and a CD case taped to the side. I didn't even see her, just grabbed it and left. It worked fine, like way better than I thought. The speaker sounded decent and volume knob didn't crackle, and the tray slid open real smooth. I figured I'd throw the CD in first just to see what kind of dumb music she thought was funny. The CD was blank on the front. No label, just a black marker scribble that said, "Play me," with a little smiley face. I popped it in expecting like bad karaoke or some weird prank track or maybe a dumb parody song. Instead, it started with nothing, just a low hum. Then a click like someone pressing record on a tape deck. Then I heard a voice. Male, deep, kind of rough. He was saying something, but the quality was bad. You could hear the buzz in a fluorescent light or maybe a fan in the background. Then another voice, quieter, shaking. Female, she was saying please over and over, but not yelling, just tired. I sat there frozen. The man asked her a question, but it was hard to make out. Something about a name. Then the sound of a chair moving. Then her voice again cracked like she'd been crying a long time. "I already told you," she said. Then some kind of banging sound. Metal? I don't know. He didn't yell. That was maybe the worst part. His voice stayed calm the whole time. Kept asking her to be honest. At one point he asked if she was thirsty. Said, "You know the rules. Just answer the question." I hit stop. Just sat there for a second. Then I skipped to the next track. Same thing. Different voice. Still a woman. Still scared. Same man asking the questions. Same cold, steady tone. This one was shorter, but at the end you hear someone whisper, "Help." I took the CD out, looked at the back. There was nothing. No label, no writing, just scratched plastic. I messaged Haley right away. "Hey, what's on the CD?" She replied instantly. "Did you play it?" I said, "Yeah, what is it?" She said, "Just a prank I made in college. Don't worry." I sat there staring at that for a second because no way was that a prank. If it was way too good. Too real. The audio quality wasn't edited. There were no sound effects, no music, no fake laughter. Just long pauses and breathing in that voice. That guy who never got angry but kept pressing like he already knew the answers. I asked her if she acted in it. She didn't reply. Profile was still there. She just stopped talking. The next day, I looked up her name. Nothing weird came up. Just some race results from a 5 and a couple of pictures from what looked like a wedding 2 years ago. But when I clicked on her profile again, it was gone. Either deleted or blocked. I didn't listen to the rest of the CD. I kept it though. I know that's messed up. I don't even know why. I think I just needed to have it in my hand like it was something I could control. But sometimes I wonder if there's more to it. If that CD was passed around. If I wasn't the first to play it. If someone else had recorded those voices and slipped them onto a mix and then just waited to see who'd listen. I checked the stereo again the next week. Something felt off about it. Like the back panel had been unscrewed at some point. The screws didn't match. 2 were flatheads, 2 were Phillips. I took it apart and looked inside. There was a strip of tape inside the top. A name written on it in tiny pen. Club W and year, 2016. I looked it up. There was a missing persons report. Local. Girl in her 20s. Vanished after leaving her shift at a diner. No suspects. No witnesses. I've never listened to the rest of the CD. I probably won't. But I can still hear her voice sometimes when the house is quiet. That soft, broken please. The stereo still works. I haven't plugged it in again. You ever buy something from someone and halfway through the drive home, you're already regretting it, even though you haven't figured out why yet? That was me with this lawnmower. I wasn't even looking for one, really. I was crashing at my cousin's place for a few months while saving up to get my own spot. He lived on this half-acre chunk of land with way too much grass and a mower that hadn't worked since, like, Obama's first term. He kept talking about borrowing one from his neighbor, but never actually did it. So I said, screw it, I'll find one on Marketplace. Figured it would score me a few "yeah man, thanks" points, and make me feel less like I was just mooching off him. So I went looking. Most of the listings were either rusted out junk or people trying to sell their dad's fancy zero-turn like it was made of gold. Then I found Brandon's post. Old gas mower, still runs, easy peasy $25. Bring cash. No details, no brand name, just one picture of the thing sitting in a garage with a bunch of shadows in the background. Couldn't even see the handle. The caption said, Runs a little rough, but gets the job done. Good enough for me. I messaged him. He said come by after 5. No emojis, no punctuation. Just the address. He lived way out, like not even suburbs, more like that weird no man's land where it's just a few houses surrounded by fields and a random tire swing hanging from a tree that's been dead for 10 years. The kind of area that still has stray dogs running around. When I pulled up, I couldn't tell which house it was at first. There were 3 driveways side by side, all gravel, no numbers anywhere. I texted him, and 2 seconds later, this guy steps out of the garage like he'd been watching the whole time. Brandon was quiet, real quiet. He didn't say hi, just nodded and pointed to the mower like that was the full transaction. I walked over, took a look. It was old but intact. Had a pull start, no electric junk. The wheels were crusted with dry grass. The paint was dull and chipped, but it looked fine. I tipped it back to check the blade. Dull but not bent. I figured if it even halfway ran, I could sharpen the blade and use it for a few months easy. I gave him the cash, he nodded again, and turned around without saying anything. Just went back inside like the scene was over. I loaded it into the back of my cousin's pickup and left. That drive home felt weird, not dramatic or anything, just off. Like I kept glancing at the mower in the rear view like it was gonna move or slide around. At one point, I actually pulled over and made sure it was strapped in right, even though I knew it was. Back at the house, I wheeled it into the backyard and decided to give it a test run. The thing started up on the second pull, which surprised the hell out of me. It made this low, uneven growl like it was clearing its throat, but it moved. Grass flew out the chute. I was halfway across the yard when the engine coughed and sputtered out. I figured maybe the gas was bad or too low, so I opened the gas tank to check. That's when I smelled it. It wasn't gas. I mean, it smelled like gas at first, but underneath that was something else. Sour. Metallic, like pennies and rot. I tilted the mower back, checked underneath again. Nothing stuck in the blade. I looked at the fuel again and saw something floating inside. I grabbed a flashlight and held it up to the tank. There was something small at the bottom. White. Not plastic. Not part of the engine. I emptied the tank into a plastic tub I found in the garage. The gas poured out normal until the end, when something hard clinked against the plastic. It was a piece of bone. Tiny. Jagged. With one end smoothed out like it had been worn down or broken off from something bigger. I stared at it for a while, then pulled it out and held it up to the light. It was definitely not from an animal, you could tell. That wasn't the worst part, though. There was a note stuck to the inside of the fuel cap, folded and wedged into a little pocket under the rim like someone had hidden it there on purpose. It was just a scrap of paper. Dirty, wrinkled, but the writing was still clear. Dispose like the others. I stood there for probably 5 minutes, just holding that note and staring at the gas tank. My head was buzzing like it had been stuffed with bees. I kept thinking, what the hell does that even mean? Whose the others was this bone part of? Someone? Were there more? I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to bring it inside. I didn't want it on the lawn. I ended up pushing it into the garage and locking the door behind me. I told my cousin the mower had a bad engine and I'd figure it out later. That night, I tried to find Brandon's listing again. Gone. His whole profile, gone too. No messages in my inbox like he never even existed. I tried Googling stuff, missing people, weird marketplace stories, even that exact phrase from the note. Nothing concrete came up. Just a few vague message board posts, and one article about a guy who went missing 2 towns over a few years back. He was last seen mowing a field near the woods. The next day, I checked the mower again. There were smears on the handle. They hadn't been there before. Brownish red, not a lot. Just enough to see when the light hit them right. I haven't touched it since. It's still in the garage. Still smells the same. I don't know what to do with it. Can't sell it. Can't throw it out. What if someone else finds the bone? Or worse, what if they don't and it just keeps getting passed around? Sometimes at night I hear a low rattling from the garage like metal shifting. Could just be the house selling. Could be wind. But I've started locking the inside door too. Just in case.